Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in today's session. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Mr. James Solomon. He's the CEO of Olee.Space, which is a space and photonics tech company based in India. They are based in Pune, and it's a pleasure to have him here. Just to let you know his background, he's a material science graduate from IIT-Bombay, and it's a pleasure to have him. James, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure is all mine, sir. Thank you for the
Thank you
introduction.
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, this is Defense Capital Conversations where we try to take up issues that are relevant to the Indian Armed Forces. Not just that, we also deal with policy matters. Apart from that, we also do try and project the capabilities of the Indian aerospace and defense sector. This is one such session where I'll be conversing with James Solomon to find out what Olee.Space is doing currently and what is their future plans. Thank you, James. Let me start first with your personal background. From material science to photonics tech company, how did this happen?
That's a good question, sir. In my college days, I used to build other products like small projects, gigs, and all those things. One of those things was communications for using LoRa chips. So LoRa is that long range chips that we use. It was like it started all with a gig project, but it went on to have its own merits. So I saw what the problems were in the communications in normal 4G to 5G. So this was in 2017. I saw the problems in the wireless spectrums were shifting on towards Reliance Jio and all that times, right? So it was not just in the country; it was out in the global race as well. That everyone was starting for low cost and higher bandwidth communications. So that is what it started with. So data centers were emerging. 2017 was the year for everything. Was the year where data Geo introduced its data centers right in every state. The cost dropped down drastically. Telecoms went bankrupt. Some of the telecoms stayed afloat. And with the small project that I could envision this bigger space. So that is everything how I shifted from being a material science to become an thing into this. I think my passion shifted with the market.
Right. Okay. So you started this along with Suman Hiramat, who is your co-founder, but she didn't study with you, right? She
No,
studied
no.
at some other institute. How did the two of you come together?
So this is also funny. So I think I started to this was 2019 August September August on that time. I was literally reaching out to all the people for as a newcomer, right? As a newcomer in the startup, you reach out to people for investments. You do not know about capital in the first place, how it works. And I started reaching out through all the CEOs and everything else. So the bigger pool of CEOs I could find was from industrial exhibitions, right? You bash in an industrial exhibition and then you meet all the people, C-level guys over there. I was roaming around in BC Goregaon at that time, and that is where I saw Suman that she was working with an industrial exhibitor, and I said, okay, you give me this pool of this number, contact numbers, everything else, and then I want to have a word with them and then raise investment. This is how we met, and from there then she gathered interest of what I was doing, and then we started it together as a company. Till that time company was not even incorporated, so that was very naive stage.
Okay. So essentially, you just had an idea which you wanted to convert into a startup, and then this kind of Suman meeting happened, and then it all fell into place. Is that how it happened?
I had a product in place, but not this. The company's name, if you see, it's Citoto Digital Personality Private Limited. So the
Hmm.
digital personality was the idea of having an true self on the digital part. Even before this, things that comes into Digiyatra and all those things that you see right now, that was what the idea initially started with a hardware angle to it. How do we enable that within the city and everything else? So it was always a hardware play for me. But the services were different.
Okay, but you describe yourself only space as a satellite communication,
Right.
photonics, and defense company. But
Right.
what do you solve at Ole Space? What is the solution that you provide, and who are your customers?
Right. So when we started with the LoRa chip, we started with low bandwidth and higher range communications, and then we realized that spectrum is going to be involved everywhere. So then we later shifted to television white space, all the radio frequency communications, and then we realized the spectrum is again going to be different for different different geographical areas. Now, if you go on to solve every problem in every country, right, on the geopolitical level, then you're not going to be a global company, and your customers are not going to be happy about it, and the investors are not going to be happy about it, about your expansion plans. So the way it goes is, how do you extract the entire pros of all these things and then put in place together? And I found that in light. So the word Oli in Tamil, as you say, right? So Oli is light in Tamil. So that is how it says that light solves everything. The speed is the light is the fastest. It carries data that you can see in fiber optics. The only thing that we did justice was put it wirelessly from one place to another, so that the deployment time goes down than the fiber optic cables. So at Olee.Space, what we do is we do solve data transfers from small terrestrials, ship to ships, drone to drones, HAPS to HAPS, and then space. So the technological stack is the same. The domain changes, so the material changes. So that is how we keep it very simple.
Right. So, okay. So, who are your customers? What are the
Yeah.
problems, or whose problems are you trying to solve through your company's this products?
So as I mentioned, the domains right now. So the customer, it's a domain specific customer range. Now on the ground, if we see terrestrial, there are telecoms that are operating for shifting from 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, and all generations. Now typically when it happens, when you're expanding a hardware setup in a city, what you say is 2G was at 10 kilometers. 3G was at 5 kilometers, the tower positionings. I mean, then 4G at 2.5 kilometers, 5G is every three buildings once you see a 5G small cell tower, right? When it happens, you need to have a backhaul fiber optic cable running to this kind of towers, right? And when it runs, it means that you have to have your capex involved in it by putting on these fiber optic cables underground, or in India, as we call it, throwing above the buildings, right? So this is the problem for telecom. When the capex doubles and your profit margins are still the same, as a telecom, you're not seeing any profits. The only way to make profits for a telecom is to reduce the capex involvement, that is the underground fiber optic cables, right? And then the time taken to do that part. The time also is a major factor. Now, this is exactly what we solve on the terrestrial front. The time taken to deploy for a fiber optic cable is about 9 months, with about 30 plus licenses involved from the government in each and every geographical territory, if you see any country. And that 9 months, 30 licenses, and then seeing a ROI after 8 years, 9 years does not make sense for a company. Here, what we do is the time taken to install is about 10-15 minutes, right? And the ROI generation that you see is much faster over here. And here you do not require that spectrum licenses because you're not operating in the spectrum anymore. And this is scalable globally. And seeing in things where drone policies are coming in the country and everything else, your overhead fiber optic cables are now disappearing. Stricter policies are being introduced. Now, in that positioning, your 5G installation stops by Jugaad, right? In that part, you need to have a high bandwidth solution. That is where exactly we fit in right in the market with 10 Gbps, even 100 Gbps bandwidth over a kilometer. That is how we operate. And this is the most scalable part in the Middle East as well, because that is where the whole money part is on the global race. For high bandwidth without digging, they have very, very stricter policies than India on the digging part as well. So I think we are right on the track on that.
Very nice. So, you are a 5-year-old company, five,
Right.
6-year-old company, and how did you go about funding your company, your startup? How did you start?
So
And where are you
typically,
currently? And I believe you got a seed funding of about
yeah,
$3 million very recently. So, how
right.
did it go about?
I come from a middle class family. I come from a place where it says that you need to have a better job and things. And I think I was there on that part as well in the better jobs positionings. But it always was a gut feeling for me because I interned a lot in my college days. I had interned in about 10 plus companies that included finance companies as well, and included lathe machine companies as well. Where I did job works and did door to door sales as well to understand the customer. And I've been paid well in certain internships. I was not paid well. Understanding on the corporate life skill for me, life cycle for me, it was always that I got the pros of the one sitting in the C-level positions and understanding the market from there. How do they visualize the entire economy? That I think that was an push on that time that led me into this culture. Second thing is about the funding. I think I was pretty much dry till 2022 and about to give up. Like Suman and I, we put in all our money into it. I was doing in second-hand car sales and bike sales in my college days and everything, and I put in about 20-22 lakhs into it, all cash. Right, and this is how we went to Lamington Roads by foot, and then got components and then did. So it was grind, and this was COVID time as well, right? So not a lot of travel was involved into this, but the travel that we did was very so Delhi to Bombay, Bombay to Delhi was in general dabbas. So that was a kind of thing that we did, but we trusted the process in the whole way. Investors in the hardware scale in the at that time uh, were not good, right? So it was a spike in the software investments, right? And this was post-COVID time, 2021 second wave time. So the investors were pretty much not supportive, very honestly, and then they did not see that scale.
Yes, yes,
So in 2022, the whole case was different. The investment cycle, if we see in the Indian ecosystem, as well as in foreign, was about in software scale. Not a lot of space tech companies or any other companies was actually in the right part of investments. There were investments in Agnikul, in other companies, but most of them were parked over there till they could see an light in the space tech. I'll put it that way, right? So, so Agnikul, then Manastu, and all these guys, crazy guys, right, out there, Skyroad, raised good amount of investors, and other investors are waiting to see how the space tech actually reacts to investments. So this was a learning curve for the VCs as well in that time. And then people realize, oh, it's not just rocket propulsion, it's satellite communications, it's in-orbit servicings. Right, I've got good friends in the space tech who are still building, but investments were dried up, like Orbited in that case, right? So, so good guys, but investments were not coming up right on time. I think I was also in the same rat race in that.
even the government policy was not helping actually.
Government police was not there, right? And I think in Delhi we were all called from the space and then said, okay, what are the things that you want? I said, what are the things that you can give? So this is how after 1997, the 2020 was the second norm that came in, right? And the space police was happening. A lot of things. I think that was all needed, and it was going on the right track. Right? If we were in invested skill sooner, this would have been the right time for us to enter the market as well. The market
Right.
timing also has to suit in. So pretty much not complaining. This was a very good time, and the grind was there. And then we raised in about 25-30 lakhs from our one of the small investor who trusted in us and then came in early. This went again completely towards the capex. None of us, not me, Suman, other people did not take in any salary, not even a bit of it. We were doing other chores to help us out. Not full-time jobs. Obviously, we are full-time in over here. So this is how the grind was there, sir. And obviously, then we went on to get Mr. Sundar, who is the current co-founder of the company as well. He invested a good amount in the company. I think about 40-50 lakhs in the company at that time. And then from there on, it scaled up really well, and he turned out to be a third co-founder in the company. So Sundar's background is a CA, 1998. Then I'm Ahmedabad Finance, and then built and sold his companies. Then he runs his own VCs, fund managing a VC of 250 CR, right? So he
He
had a
is
very
also the
well
CFO of the company.
CFO of the company, right? So he had a very good idea, and his directionality has helped us a lot, and is helping us still, right? So that experience when it comes in with a kick, that really helps you a lot as a founder in the company. That someone trusting you to a level that leaves everything and then joins you. So I think that I was quite lucky on that. So
Interesting. That's
yeah,
interesting. Okay, so you have raised some $3 million at the moment,
yeah,
and one of the things that your investors found very interesting about the idea of Olee.Space was the self-healing ultra high bandwidth satellite mesh
right,
network, right?
right.
What is it exactly? Why was it interesting to your investors?
All right. So when I say it things, I say it in two different ways. How it is going to solve a particular thing, and is it going to pay me, right? So the second part, most of all, is to answer the board meetings
Correct.
and understand, right? So because that is how you grow. the first question is always how is it going to solve your problems. Now the problem on light communication is, in laser communication is, you're always doing point to point communications, right? It's starting from one point and ending at another. And if you want to have any kind of auxiliary parts or shifting parts to it, you either create a daisy chain. In technical words, non-technical words, if I say, if you're going from point A to C, then B becomes your junction, and then you shift from B to C. Here on the junction, some kind of delays, latency might add in. And this is not acceptable to certain financial institutions that work on very faster speeds. That's the
Right.
reason Starlink comes on to LEO orbits. Everyone wants to economize, have their part on LEO orbits because of this one factor, right? And
Mm.
that costs a lot as well. So here is where we saw it differently. We saw that, okay, if LEO is the one that is going to be a game-changing factor, and how are we making sure that becomes the most efficient one? Now, as a material science or a normal 10 12th class chemistry as well, you will understand that the best way to have a structure is a carbon structure, is a mesh structure. Either it can be C20, C40, C60 kind of a structure, buckyball structures that gives you most efficient way of routing it. This
Mm.
also has been observed in the human body of when you're transferring pain from any part of the body to the brain. It finds the shortest route. And this is where we realize that this is where the game is. Now, if you want to reduce down your latency, speed, or increase the speed, then you have to find the best way possible. And we train the algos in such a way that your communication from point A to Z goes on with the shortest way available. This is where the self-healing, we call it a self-healing. And because we have FSMs, fast steering mirrors onto the LEOs, this works on a W-shaped one, multi-orbit constellations. We do not go to GSOs, we just work on MEOs and LEOs and lower MEO orbits. And by doing this, we save a ton on capex, positioning the satellites at the right time at the right place,
Mm.
and then transferring the data. This is the whole
Interesting.
part.
Okay, I'm sorry. See, since my YouTube channel is watched by even the common man who doesn't understand
Right.
much of the technicalities,
Mm.
what do you mean by latency? I mean, it's
Okay.
easy for people to go to the dictionary and find out, but
Right.
it would be better if you
Right.
explained it in very simple terms for the layman who is
Right.
also my viewer.
Latency directly translates to delay. It is delay, right? So that's a synonym for latency. How much time is it taking from point A to point B for a data for a hello message to reach? That is latency.
Right. Okay. So you do a low delayed
Right.
communication
Right.
process through your system. That's what
Right.
you're talking about.
All right. On the
Okay.
ground, on space, on apps, and everywhere else.
Very everywhere. Right.
Right.
Interesting. So how does it help the the SAT communication sector essentially? Where is it? Where does it come into use in terms of
Right.
the satellites that we have today?
Right. So now here comes the core age-old problem, right? So 1980s till date, spectrum. This is the answer. Spectrum is the thing that is a resource. Now everyone is fighting about spectrum. Now Elon coming into the country fighting for spectrum, India fighting for its own spectrum, the companies fighting, right? Now what happens is when you coin something as a resource, it is meant to be depleted. It is meant to be controlled. It is meant to be monitored, right? And it can be jammed as well and eavesdropped as well if we talk
Hmm.
about different spectrums as well. So spectrum allocations have been a very crucial part of the Indian economy as well, and that is how the monetizations also have taken place. Now, how do you monetize it globally and Indian on a regional way? That's where the entire debate is. I'll leave out to the public to see that part, right? So that's been happening for a long time now. To answer the question, how does light change the whole picture and dynamics of this thing is, now when you operate on a spectrum, you operate on certain frequencies, right? So you work on certain bands of spectrum and you're allocated certain bands of spectrum. Why is the allocation? So that someone else does not come in and take part, and then it becomes a legal thing, and then you can challenge in court of law. Now, when you do not operate in spectrum, but transmit in tens and hundred times more data than the spectrum-based communications, then it
Hmm.
becomes a golden grail for everyone to just hop in. This is what we do with light. So light does not operate on your normal radio frequency spectrum, which does not create noise in the spectrum. Noise as in it does not disturb the spectrum. It does not create any interference. No jamming is possible onto this. Uh, eavesdropping is possible onto this thing. So it means that you have a plain water, right? And you're inserting a needle through it. It does not hurt the water. Plus, it does not hurt anything that's moving around in the water. This is that way. I'll put it that way. So in spectrum-based communications, now the more higher the satellite is positioned, more rights to the spectrum that they have. Comparison to OneWeb, that is Airtel's backed OneWeb, right? So they are a satellite constellation. Comparing that to Elon's Starlink over here, if you compare, OneWeb has more rights because it operates on a 1200-kilometer orbit. Starlink operates at 450, 650-kilometer orbits. Kuiper operates at 800, right? So you have more rights when you're above in the orbit. It means also to say that when you're transmitting data from 1200-kilometer orbit to the ground, the likely communication that would reach faster is Elon Musk Starlink at 450-kilometer orbits. And because he has got more of those things in the LEO orbit. Now, if I say that you're going to transmit the same amount of information, same amount of data at 1200-kilometer orbit and 400-kilometer orbit at 1/10 of the cost, this is where we come in the market comparisons.
Right.
Plus,
Okay.
plus, the satellites are low cost because for radio frequency you require a lot of electricity backup generations, and the satellite becomes bulkier. Here, it's just a light signal. The satellites are very, very small.
Right. Interesting. So one of the market studies, IMARC study I was
Yeah,
looking at, which said that India's this photonics business is about $73 billion in
right,
2024, and
right,
it's likely to go up to $150 billion by 2023 in a 10-year span. So the growth rate is about CGAR of about 7 to 8%. And
right.
almost all market studies on photonics talks about that. Do you agree with this assessment? And where do you think India has a challenge in the competition?
Completely on that part because photonics in the semiconductor race that we are seeing a very, very good part right now.
Mhm.
Just 10 years ago, what we could not see in the market on the photonic race, now single growth crystals and everything else is being manufactured in the country, and we're challenging some parts of crucial parts of Russia as well in that part. Like I know a friend of mine, a company of mine that builds a single growth crystal, and they're doing really, really good. So the customers include Bark, DRDO, and he's a guy from Israel in that case, right? So when
Mhm.
you see that kind of shift in the mindset of a person that they can build a semiconductor growth crystal that is used EA crystal, right? In that space, then you see other verticals. Now, how are the auxiliary verticals being built around that company, built around that ecosystem? And people who are building right now are going to materialize that in the next 5 years, right? This is how I see it. The next 5 years you're going to see crystals and everything else that would be going for your really, really high uh, how do I put it? Uh, so I think that 10 years from now on the photonics growth, the way that we see is a single growth crystal is going to be the biggest factor that is going to change the photonics pathway. Plus the secondary part to it is having your own laser source in the country. There's no laser source manufacturer in the country, by the way, in
Mhm.
the country right now. And a very big company just had a word with us 4 days ago. Uh, and they mentioned that they have been tasked to build that thing, which I'm very, very happy about, right? This all together, when you see, that's the boom on the photonics industry. It's not just in communications, photonics in medical industry, photonics in aerospace, and then a nuclear powered industry, right? Your phones, tablets, everything on the digital ways, your
Yeah.
switches, network switches. Now, on high energy parts as well. So photonics is going to be a change factor in every other. It's going to revolutionize the core industry out there, which otherwise was not available. I very well agree to it, but I'm not sure whether it's going to be 2033 or 2028. It's going to be much faster.
Oh, okay. You're
Yeah.
just giving 5-year timeline for this growth.
Right.
Right.
I see
Interesting.
it that way because most of the exports, given the geopolitical situations, would arise out of this, and a lot of investments are pouring in Tamil Nadu as well. In that case,
Okay.
right, and Gujarat. I think the other
Interesting.
two states that would lead this.
Gujarat and Tamil Nadu would lead.
I'll
This.
comment on that. Two
Very,
states they lead this.
very, very nice. Happy to hear that. So you're also in this directed energy,
Yeah,
weapon space. I mean, which is a natural, progression that you generally make, and also anti-drone technologies that you talked about. Can you
right.
talk specifically about these two and what are you doing in this space, and how is it shaping up?
Right. So if you see there are 10 points to build an optical communications, there are 5 points going to be the same all the time. This is what I learned from my mom when she says that you need to survive for a long time. You need to have five base things in your things that are going to give you 10 different recipes, right? And I think that somehow got applied to us as well. So we got to see ki, okay, if you have to survive, you need to sell what you have built earlier rather than waiting for a system to come in. So this
Kitchen
is
tech to defense tech.
true defense, tech, right? In that case.
Kitchen tech to defense tech.
Right, and this is I think a more of all an Indian way to see things, right? So I think when we started with when we were building the systems all together for communications, how do you align the communications, how do you point a laser from over 10 kilometers, over 50,000 kilometers and 80,000 in space, is how you see things on a macro level and a very very big level as well, right? So you see into things that if you can transmit a beam that is not going to be bigger than a 120 mm, a 12 centimeter, over 10, 20 kilometers.
Mhm.
That's crazy, right? So you can target something over this kind of region where your eyes do not see, where telescopes give out. This is where the whole thing changes. Now, what are the applications that arise out of this is what we need to monetize. These are the segments in the market that you do not see every day as the customers use it. There are no customers at all if they do not know, right,
Mhm.
that this is possible. This is what changed the whole course. Now, when you can transmit, when you can acquire a target at such
Mhm.
longer distances without a camera, without having a visual interface to it, then you monetize it. And even before ops and everything else, we were looking into things far in 2023 itself. What are the auxiliary things that can be built out of what we're building? Because communications, if I say on the ground, would not be market for me 2 years from now. We'll be hardly making any sales 2 years from now on the ground, because spectrum would not be there for 5Gs to operate, 6Gs to operate. We become
Mhm.
absolute, or we become in that case saturated. That's the right word, saturated. So
Mhm.
telecom market on the ground is not going to give me any money. So 2 years from now, what is going to give us that kind of right thing with a thing that is going to be useful for the country, right?
Mhm.
This is how
Mhm.
the shift happened. So now coming to the tech, if you can transmit in a 2 milliwatt laser at 10 kilometers, 500, 2 watt laser at 10 kilometers, you can very well transmit a high energy laser as well in that case. And not at 10 kilometers because your lasers degrade, there are atmospheric things and physics coming into this.
Yeah.
Right, and we saw the shift of things on by companies in the global race,
Mhm.
that's happening on defense scale as well. Now, DARPA was heavily investing in things on since 1980s. In that case, it's a well-known fact on that part. Even Australia was doing that. China does it, right? So
Yeah.
you do not have to visualize China doing it. If you think that China is going to do this, it's already done it probably 10 years ago, right?
Correct.
And we saw that India in that race was also been built. So some companies or some government-led companies are building it. I respect that. And we thought we can do it better in a way, right? Techniques we know
Mhm.
it better than now. If we can acquire in target and then we can send in any laser, we can obviously send in multiple lasers as well. Drones came in pretty much later at that time. Now, if you can communicate with a drone, I can destroy that drone as well
Correct.
because I have now acquired that target. So this is where the vertical comes in. So it's not two different verticals. Anti-drones is a high energy laser weapon only.
Mhm.
And very, very particularly, we do not mix our defense product supply chains, any discussions, and it's a completely different vertical. And we
Okay.
keep it very, very honestly with all our existing suppliers and vendors because
Mhm.
rules, licenses, and all those things are completely governed by anything. There's a whole different team that works onto this. None of this is merged in the company because it should not affect our civilian market as well and
Right.
global partners as well.
Okay. So, how do you manage your cash flows?
On the two different verticals, let's say on the communications and DWs. On the communications, when we see, as I said, we work on the same base recipe. If there's
Mhm.
going to be butter chicken for the next 10 days, my recipe is there already on the table, right? I just have to mix it. So right now what we're doing is we're cutting down a lot of product ranges. Now, initially when we said we are doing 1 kilometer, 10, 20, 30, 40 Gbps, even 100 Gbps, finding a client on that every product becomes a hideous task. And then
Mm,
your customers would bluntly ask you, why can't you do for 400 kilometers? Boss, it's not going to be the curvature of the earth at 20 kilometers, right? So you
mm,
have to educate in the market that is completely new to this segment, and then wait for the market to ripen and then convert them into a client. This is a typical cycle for a new skill technology to come in. So what we did was we stopped educating the market. We absolutely have zero marketing costs for us. We do not
right.
advertise anything. We do not go into industrial exhibitions. None of it is planned. We know where our customer is. The customer knows that where to find us, right?
Mm,
And we are there on the table every time on that scale. So that's because I have seen it in a very cruel way of how without funds we have to survive. So allocating the funds in the right way has to be a first priority. So
mm,
allocating of funds in places where the customer feels a good factor about it, right? Some changes, some
mm,
customizations, but not all.
mm.
So we have struck on the ground 10
Okay,
kilometers and 10 Gbps. That's the
okay.
product lineup. If a customer wants 20, 12 kilometers, have it 10 kilometer into two, and then you have
Mm,
a rail. We are not going to customize it.
mm.
If the customer walks away, fine with it, because I cannot have a loss based on a customization. I'll rather have the customer walk away and then come back.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
that is how
So
we do it.
you do have business currently that pays you right now.
Recently, on this space only, certain regulations were removed off, right? And then we could see a breathe. Right now, if I say we'll be starting 6 months from now for our sales,
Right.
we are heads down on the product development to make
Mhm.
it not come
Right.
back to the factory.
Okay. And this 3 million that you have raised, how are you going to use it?
So the allocation is pretty much on, it's a capex heavy. So 60% of the fund is going to be on the capex that we have, and already the capex has been, we are working on that.
Mm,
The next 20% is on the people, right? And we have excellent people in the company. So it's that we build it in such a way that if the guys in the company cannot build it, no one else in the country can build it. So that's the
mm.
motive. Was good people work with good people, and it's my responsibility to get those people together. So
Yeah.
a very good compensation, everything else, and very good people we have in the company. The next 20% is for the next round. That's untouched for FD.
Okay. Okay. I got it. So 60% capex, 20% HR, and another 20 for future
Right.
targets.
And this would change, I think, in a month from now. This is
Okay.
always going to fluctuate, but I'm not touching the capex money.
I got it.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay, since you currently talked about this people, you're investing in people.
Yeah.
I see that you're recruiting almost on a monthly basis, different people, and recently you got Air Vice Marshal Rajiv Ranjan to join you as a strategic advisor. So,
Yes.
what is the strategy behind your recruitments? How do you plan your recruitments, and how do you recruit people in the first place?
Right.
What
So
is
all my
the reason that for recruiting these people?
Right. So all my internships that I did, right, I learned from I worked with the C-level guys who are pretty typically above their 55, 60s and that part. So I think I've just copied all this parts. So whenever I asked them, like I used to sit them with them for 3, 4 hours straight to understand the process of recruitment. So that's
Mhm.
a always have a recruitment from a very experienced guy, right? So recruit a very experienced guy. Those will not be your hand in person. This They would be acting like an advisor, but those
Mhm.
would be the kind of people your people would look for, right?
Look,
The technical
look
part,
ahead. Yeah.
look at look
Look
at
up to.
look
Yeah.
up to in that place, right? And
Okay.
those are the people that we can have as a fallback mechanism when things go south on the technical parts. We do not have
Mhm.
MBAs, we do not have BBAs onto the company, right? So
Mhm.
that's why founders are there. It's a founder-led company. All four of us in that case, we know what has to be done, and we have our own verticals that we look into. Everyone is doing great on that scale. So the
Mhm.
core team, 100% onto that, our focus is. Then every and the second part is a senior level guys. We understand from them what not does not have to be performed, right? With their years of experience, what we should not be doing. There cancels out 80% of the mistakes or failures that we might have already done, saves the time, saves capex, saves money as well. Then comes really mid senior level guys, right, who have got 7 or 8 years of experience in the sector. Not so I'll tell you, India does not have a lot of people on this particular place. The
Yeah.
brain drain has already happened, and we are left with very very few high class guys. All right, so we typically work on with going doorstep to doorstep in that case, and having those guys convinced and everything. And typically, I'll tell it's a failure rate is really high in this. Like
Mm.
60-70% we fail to get that person. But yeah, we were bearing with it, and I think in the next 6 months it should normalize for us to have this failure rates on recruiting people.
Okay. Great.
These
So this,
people are professors, most of you are professors, professors
okay.
of practice,
Okay.
uh, right? Yeah.
Right. I got it. Interesting. So one more thing is, what do you have with Pune facility? What is the setup that you have there?
Right. So here in Pune right now, we have three different labs altogether. We have a lab dedicated to communications. We have a lab dedicated to directed energies,
Hmm.
and both the labs do not mix with each other. We have an NPD lab, new product development lab. That's the only lab jointly people have discussions in, and then they kind of exchange ideas, and then they go back to their respective labs.
Okay.
And this labs host and other things like normal things what we have is for the company
Hmm.
built
Hmm. Okay.
machineries and all.
Right. So and you do spend money on R&D?
Very well, that's the only thing that we spend on right now.
In fact, I've always believed that it is the startups which are actually spending money on R&D. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so we spend a lot on
Okay.
R&D.
What will be your, in percentage terms, what is your R&D spend?
So out of 60% capex, I'll say, right, in that part only about 40% is there in the R&D only. Rest is the part
Okay.
that we're going to send off.
Okay.
There are a lot of consumables that goes in into burning of lasers and everything else.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. And you also keep entering into partnerships with various
Right,
academic institutions, some companies, and some
right.
tech companies. You had recently signed an MOU with what 3D Net Technologies, and also with Telemart uh, India, and
Yeah,
also some academic institutions you have done it.
right.
What is the strategy behind these
Right.
MOUs?
So the typical very, very strong difference between software and a hardware startup is software
Hmm.
has got people to work on, and they can work on from a 6 by 6 room as well. For a hardware company to excel, there are multiple things that you have to work on with, right? Partners and everything. So components and everything else. And every
Hmm.
component cannot be built. And if you go on to build every single component, you're not going to scale. For a hardware company, all that I've learned from other hardware companies that have really made great in the world out there have been a partner-led company. So two things happens over here. One thing is your partner has trust in you with an exclusive partnership that you are going to build business for them. Second thing is you're not going to worry about your competitors having that same partnership line. This is
Hmm.
both global and this is both domestic. So that strategy actually gives you both the companies a comfort on products as an additional supply chain for them, and then because
Hmm.
they are not going to do the hard work in front of the customers, those guys would sell it to us, and then we have that particular system altogether, and then we sell across, right? So for a partner to come in, and then typically when we reach out as a company, we give that comfort, and we stand up to that comfort as well. And hardware always needs to be a partner led company, else it does not grow, does not scale.
Right. And why did you choose Pune, if I may ask, instead of your
We
home
were
state, Tamil Nadu?
so we were asked. So I've traveled in about every state, every city in the country, right? And I've traveled
Mhm.
about 17, 22 countries also globally. What I've seen typically about Pune, and by the way, our investors also asked us to shift to Bangalore. My brother stays in Bangalore. So the thing I see in Pune, and I think that I do not see elsewhere is, apart from weather, so it has typically the Bangalore weather, but Pune is a very, very strategically located place for a defense tech photonics company. There are
Mhm.
five parts of Pune, if you see as a whole. One is a defense angle to it, one is a student crowd, then comes really, really good societies and new developing high-tech areas in Pune. Then comes really, really rural places of Pune on the other side, southern, southeastern part of Pune is really rural side. Then comes an kind of culture that imbibes all these things together, right? So that's the patch that we see in Pune that I don't see elsewhere. If I see one other place that I can see, is Bangalore, but with traffic to it. For us, for testing, every time we have to climb mountains, you have to go down very long distances across the board,
Mm,
and that does not help us to position us elsewhere.
right. So, in this defense sector, defense space or
Yeah,
space defense, where people keep using these terms
yeah,
interchangeably these days, and also the space policy of 2023. I mean, I think
right.
the main key area of focus for the defense sector in the aerospace side is going to be the def space or space def, you know, area, and then the space policy. How do these kind of aid you into working on what you're doing already?
So on the light part, when you see that the typical advantage you have is your light does not get tampered with, cannot be eavesdropped or jammed. The three
Mm,
golden words for defense this system out there, right? It should your communication does not have to be eavesdropped, not jammed, nor even have to be detected in that case, right?
correct.
Is exactly what we do. And so that becomes a perfect fit for the defense in the first place, both on ground and both on in space as well. So communications, earlier, if you had a GSO satellite, it used to beam in around all the parts of India. If it had to do a multi-point to point communications, multi-point to multi-point communications. And in that place, your certain areas of Pakistan, certain areas of China, Tibet, and other places also used to get your satellite signals that could have
Right.
been interfered. Now, here, when you typically have a point-to-point communication, it's not going to beam in outside your Bombay's 1 BHK, that is about 600 square foot room.
Mhm.
So that's how very, very secure communications you have, right? And if you see the OSLs as well, optical inter-satellite links, that's again and again a very stressed out word in any defense part out there, not just in India. The reason is you need to have really high bandwidth communication between satellites for them to continuously talk to the ground stations, right? To capture in a lot of imagery data. If you see
Mhm.
friends at Pixel and Galaxy in that scale, all that data bandwidth that they capture, right? Compression, and after compressing, when they send back to the Earth, you have to have a bandwidth capability of about 10 Gbps or even higher. But also you have to keep in mind that your uplink also has to be the same when you have a gateway. Now, most of the other companies that we see in laser communications, right, are doing a bandwidth of 10 Gbps downlink, but the uplink down from the ground is typically on 200 kbps. That's just information to the satellite to turn and twist to the
Mhm.
particular places, which does not help a lot. That's a change that we do in the sector. When you're communicating in real time, as you are doing it in flight Wi-Fi communications and other things as well. So I think that's a place that we are changing a lot.
Okay. James, what do you do in your spare time apart from being on the,
I play football.
you play football?
Yeah, I was there in right, so many clubs and this as well. That's my
You
hobby.
continue to do you continue to do that?
Yeah, every day, every single day.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
It's an
my
absolute.
guys are really stressed about it that James really drops at 7:30 and leaves the office. He does not care about anything else. So that's a typical complaint I get from my. So
Okay.
the
Interesting. I
mind
mean,
does not.
it's quite important. It's important to have such kind of a
Right.
getaway from the high pressure job that you're doing already. So
Right. It's a very actually I'll say it's a very stress-free job right now. Most of the works that we did over the past 3 years has now been distributed, and I can have some spare time to play.
right, interesting. So I wish you all the best, James, and to your team, and to Olee.Space. It's a
Thank you.
beautiful name. I really like that name, Olee.Space.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, I wish you all the best, and thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.